lot of big changes happen in the period we call Era 2. How can we understand these changes through our three frames? At the beginning, our ancestors lived only in Africa, in very small groups. Then, cognitive breakthroughs happened that allowed us to communicate better and pass information along through generations. One of the most important innovations of this era was the development of language. Humans are social animals. We need to cooperate with each other in order to survive and thrive. The development of language allowed us to do this in two ways. First, sharing ideas through language allowed us to work together or collectively to achieve goals. Working collectively meant that we could build our first communities, large, stable bands that could work together for common purposes despite being made up of many individuals. Languages also allowed humans to create our first networks, enabling us to communicate with people who were in neighboring communities, whose languages were similar in order to exchange ideas, things, and even members through intermarriage and migration. With the tool of language, our ancestors expanded from our original home in Africa throughout most of the world, picking up new skills and technologies along the way, and forming a whole patchwork of little communities and networks by the end of the era. But in Era 2, the biggest story was the development of farming. Farming is the domestication and cultivation of plants. This was one of the most important transformations of production and distribution in all of human history. Of course, not everyone became farmers. Those who did made the changes at different times, and sometimes they still also hunted and gathered like their ancestors before them. But even so, farming dramatically changed how all people lived and worked. Farmers generally settled down in one place. They also developed an entirely new set of tools. That's why we call the original foraging societies Paleolithic, or Old Stone Tool Societies, and the farmers who came after them Neolithic, or New Stone Tool Societies. Farming societies also grew much more rapidly than their foraging neighbors. Farmers had more children than foragers, partly because they had more food. And although farmers had more diseases and were often less healthy, over time, farmers came to represent the majority of human societies. Farming radically changed how we made and shared things. Farmers had to spend long hours doing work that foragers didn't have to do. They had to plant crops, tend them, protect them from weeds and bugs and other animals that wanted to eat them. They had to harvest them and process them. Women, especially, found their hours consumed with turning harvested plants into edible food. But farming also produced enough calories that some people could do other work, specializing in making clothes or tools, for example. In this way, farming was also a gateway to a lot of other innovations. Later, as we will see, farmers were more likely to create villages and cities and produce innovations like writing and ironworking. And these changes are still with us today. Farming is still the way most of our food is produced, even if fewer and fewer of us are farmers. In fact, we won't see a change in production and distribution that is this significant again until Era 6, about 12,000 years later, when we get to the Industrial Revolution. That makes farming one of the most enduring historical transformations of all time, and it began a very, very long time ago.